For as long as I can remember, most Nintendo consoles have had backwards compatibility, letting you play the older games on the newer systems. However, at the same time, that also means that the newer games do not work on the previous generation because Nintendo ends up changing something that just makes it not compatible with it. It's a good marketing strategy when you think about it because it benefits the customer into moving forward to the newer console without feeling like their whole collection of games for the previous console is now unplayable. Sometimes backwards compatibility is not there because the hardware changes completely, and other times, well, it's something simple like changing the cartridge design just by a little bit to make sure that the new games don't go on the older system. But with the Nintendo Switch 2, everything changes because Nintendo made it to where now you can actually get yourself a Nintendo Switch 2 cartridge and make it work on the previous generation, in this case being the original Nintendo Switch. You're telling me that Nintendo Switch 2 games work on my original Switch? Well, the answer is yes and no. It actually depends. For example, here I have a copy of Pokemon Legends ZA for the Nintendo Switch 2, as you can see, and I have my Nintendo Switch OLED. Keep in mind, this also works with the Switch Lite and the original Nintendo Switch. But if I go ahead and insert the Switch 2 game, you can see that the game actually loads up on my Switch OLED. So essentially what this means is you can go ahead and start collecting some Switch 2 games even if you still haven't upgraded to a Nintendo Switch 2. As you can see, here we go again, we insert the game and it automatically boots up and we can go ahead and start the game and it actually starts to play with no issues whatsoever. So you might be wondering, so why exactly do some Nintendo Switch 2 games actually work on the original Nintendo Switch? Well, it actually turns out that Nintendo ended up making a bunch of different cartridges and they all have different meanings behind them. But don't worry, I have all the cartridges right here for you and I'm going to show them to you. So here I have some of the different cartridges that are available for the Nintendo Switch systems. And the main difference is actually lying right in front of you and it's right here on the actual code printed on the cartridges. Games like this right here, Yakuza 0, actually start with the letter LP, meaning this is going to be a game keycard. When it starts with LA, it means it's just a regular Nintendo Switch cartridge. And when it starts with LN is actually the one that you want to get because this is the one that's compatible with both Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 systems. And as for these two over here, these actually start with LB, meaning those are actually exclusively on the Nintendo Switch 2. So in other words, LB cartridges are only going to be playable on the Nintendo Switch 2 and there's no other way around it. LP require you to have an internet connection in order for you to actually be able to play. LA is what we're already used to, and LN is the one you can go ahead and start collecting if you plan on getting a Switch 2 eventually. But if the cartridges are inside of the game case, how exactly can I tell if it's compatible with the Switch? Well, here I have my copy of Mario Kart World. It only says Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch 2 only. As for Donkey Kong Bonanza, same exact thing, there is nothing here. But when you see a game that actually has this little text right here where it looks a little ugly, not gonna lie, it's actually explaining to you that this is gonna be compatible with the original Nintendo Switch. So the way that it works is it basically is only the regular Nintendo Switch copy, but when you go ahead and insert it, it actually has the Switch 2 update available to it. Meaning if you see a game like this, it's better to just get the Switch 2 version even if you don't have a Switch 2 just yet, because when you go ahead and upgrade the system, you actually already have some extra content available to you. Game keycards are my least favorite because you actually have to download the game. These can be beneficial, however at the same time they can also be a lazy way to bring games over to the Switch 2. But we can go ahead and talk about that in a separate video. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and test these cartridges out and see what happens. So first things first, we're gonna go ahead and start off with a standard Nintendo Switch game. Now obviously the game is gonna load up with no issue since it's literally intended for this system. But if we go ahead and remove this thing right here and we get a different game, in this case we are going to go with something like this right here. We are going to be going with some of the Switch 2 exclusive games. So in this case we're going to be starting off with some Mario Kart World. So if I were to get Mario Kart World and insert it into my Switch OLED, we are actually not going to be able to get in. In this case, when we insert it, it's going to give us this error code right here. Nintendo Switch 2 software cannot be played on this system. It's literally letting us know right away that it is not going to be compatible and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, I literally explained it from the beginning that it was a Switch 2 exclusive game, so it's to be expected. So we can go ahead and remove it because this is not going to be able to be played no matter what we do. So let's go ahead and try something else. In this case, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because here I have Yakuza 0, a game keycard. So since the game is not actually in this thing, I can go ahead and insert it, and instead of giving us a Switch 2 error code, it's just going to say that it could not be read. Now keep in mind, this does not mean that the cartridge was probably just dirty and it didn't read, because if I go ahead and insert it, it's going to be be doing the same exact thing. It's just not going to be able to detect it at all. Because like I said, it does not have the game included. So when I'm inserting this, it's actually trying to open up the Nintendo eShop and it's trying to get me to download the Switch 2 game. However, how am I supposed to download a Switch 2 game on a Switch 1 system? Yeah, exactly. It's not going to happen. Therefore, it makes the game keycard useless for the original Switch, and if you have no Wi-Fi on the Switch too as well. And as for another game such as this one right here, Pokemon Legends ZA, I can go ahead and insert it, and again, right away it's going to load up with no issues, and I can go ahead and start playing. I hope this helped understand the differences between the Switch 2 cartridges to see which ones are actually compatible with the original Switch. But if you learned something today, remember to give the video a thumbs up and follow for more gaming content.